More than 85 countries and organisations are meeting in Brussels in Belgium to raise funds for Syria. They're aiming to raise $6 billion. Millions of Syrians have been displaced in the protracted war and are in desperate need of humanitarian aid. This is the third such meeting of governments and aid organisations calling for funding to support Syria. Well, for the latest on the donor conference, we're joined by Maryam Zaidi in Brussels. Maryam, the target of raising $6 billion for Syria, do you think that's achievable?
Hi Karen. Well, this is the second such conference for Syria that the EU and the UN have hosted together from Brussels to really try to drum up humanitarian aid and support for the people of Syria. Now, is that $6 billion achievable? Well, I think it's fair to say yes. Last year the conference pledged some 5.6 billion euros. But that's the key point about this. Pledges really need to be turned into concrete aid, and the European Union itself, for example, has given almost 11 billion euros over the course of time to the Syrian people, both inside Syria and of course for the wider region and neighbouring countries of Syria. Now, as of course the Syrian war enters its 8th year, the humanitarian situation of course continues to deteriorate. Over 13 million Syrians are now in need of humanitarian assistance, and more than 5 million of course are refugees displaced outside of their country. And today in Brussels is the second day of this donor conference. And speaking yesterday, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, said that the conference acts as a kind of bridge between those working on the ground in Syria and decision makers. And on Tuesday, you could really see that ambition in place. Some 200 NGOs gathered to give their recommendations on how best to provide concrete on-the-ground support. And their recommendations now feed into today's main event, the ministerial part of the conference, which is of course now underway.
And Maria, what are the key priority areas for the funding?
Well, speaking at the start of proceedings today, the UN said that they are, of course, specifically looking for $3.6 billion in pledges this year to help, of course, alleviate the suffering as a whole of Syrian people. And in terms of neighbouring countries hosting Syrian refugees, we have Lebanon, which of course hosts some 1.5 Syrian refugees, and that they said too that they need funds as their capacity is overstretched. And how it needs those funds to work: it needs to support their social system, education system and training, as well as of course more funding for these big refugee camps that they have. Now, in terms of countries offering aid, what we expect that the UK will donate some £450 million, and that's about the same as they gave for 2017. And that money that the UK is going to provide will go into emergency medical support, especially for the training of doctors and nurses. And the UK will also pledge support to help protect medical facilities. Now, they say it's estimated that at least 478 health facilities have been attacked or destroyed, and at least 830 health workers have been killed in Syria since the conflict began in 2011. And now Turkey hosts, of course, a lion's share of refugees, 3.5 million, has called on the EU to do more this morning, saying that it's actually not meeting its financial obligations, a comment no doubt that the EU is not going to really welcome. Now, the EU and Turkey, of course, have a big deal between themselves that sees the EU offer funding to Turkey to ensure that Syrian refugees don't travel on to the EU. We'll have more updates throughout the day. Back to you.
OK, thank you very much. That was Maryam Zaidi there in Brussels on the donor conference for Syria.